Are we not blessed? And it's so wonderful to hear your voice, Gwen. It's also wonderful to hear everybody's voice. So remind me to speak to you about something involving your presence and your voice. You could bring your voice along. Love you, dear. So we are blessed. Last week, we started a new series, in which we will use the book of Forgiving, written by these beautiful souls, Desmond and his daughter Mfo Tutu. And I'd like to say that the journey that we begin is more than a series. It's a deep journey where last week we began to prepare the way for the fourfold path of forgiveness that they invite individuals on. And it is a journey that we are called into for the entirety of our life, right? If we look at the definition of forgiveness, there's many of them, but as we look to the definition that we explored last week from Charles Fillmore, it is surrendering the false for the true. It is knowing when we are operating from consciousness that is more from an egoic personality, fear-based consciousness, opposed to living from our highest and our most authentic, truest self, and when we are centered in living in spiritual truth. And as we navigate the world, knowing, just as Donna affirmed our principle too, that we are fully human and fully divine, that sometimes that can be challenging. So we're always being invited into forgiveness, to let go what is false and untrue. So it is not a one and done, like, oh, I did that. I forgave my sister. Sometimes it may be a process of that, but it is a journey. And so in our readiness last week, I invited you into a practice in which you were able to choose a stone from the bowl. And I invited several individuals who joined us via virtual world if they wanted me to send them one. And I did send out 5 last week. I hope, Veronica, you received yours. I know Veronica's here. She can let you know in the chat if she got it. So if you did not get one and you are here in the sanctuary and you would like to know more about it, at the end of the service, please see me and you could pick a forgiveness stone. Also, if you're joining us via Zoom and you would like me to send you one, please put it in the chat. Just put stone, yes. Okay, and then I'll make sure you get one. So that exercise involved you picking that stone, and if you so chose the mission to carry that stone in your non-dominant hand. Now, the challenge in the book was 6 hours, right? Without putting it down, without switching. But I said, okay, I'll go easy on you, 1 to 3 hours. And if you can do more than one day, please do so. And then I also ask you to look at the word that was inscribed on your stone. How did it relate to forgiveness? And how are you willing to embody that in your life? So at this point, anybody want to share? Anybody say yes and do the exercise? Deborah. So if we can get the microphone to Deborah.
Holding the microphone with my stone, except. Yes,
Wow.
except. It was difficult because I am using my non-dominant hand to do what I need to do in life.
Wow, I'm impressed you even did it, honestly.
I tried. I really, really tried, and it was hard. And the first things that I recognized were that I had to accept my limitations. Then I needed to take a look at where was I in forgiving myself, and forgiving others in my life. And as I held this stone for 3 hours one day, I went, this is a lot to hold on to. This is hard. It's doubly hard with both hands occupied and sitting. And so my sitting led to meditation, and my meditation led to a deeper awareness of that which I hold on to that I wasn't even aware that I was doing because it was constantly there. And so I willingly brought that up and allowed it to release, to say goodbye to it, to thank it first, and then say goodbye and thank you, and whatever, wherever it needed to go, it needed to go. And then to accept all that occurred. And what occurred on Friday was nothing short of a miracle.
Yay.
So it worked. It's working.
Thank you. Is there anybody on Zoom who possibly would share? Have anybody have their hand raised that did it on Zoom, the exercise, before I see one more? I know we only have time for a couple shares, but while we're waiting, who? Okay, does he want to come in and share? Do you want to bring him in and we'll hear from him? I know he's experiencing a little cold, so we're going to hold him in prayer. He started right as soon as he got the stone here. I remember having a conversation with him last Sunday.
Hi everyone.
Nico, did you
Yes.
want to share?
Yes. My stone is it says dream, and
Strength, did you
yes,
say?
dream.
Oh, dream.
Yes. And it helped me like really open my mind and my spirit to just pursue my dreams in life more. And a crazy thing, I actually went to sleep with it in my hand because, I've been holding it. And with me having it in my hand, I had more vivid dreams to pay attention
Wow.
to my dreams more because I haven't really been paying attention to them. I just been letting my dreams, dream. But like I've been actually paying attention and getting messages and everything to just to help me. So definitely, definitely helped a lot.
That's
Yes.
all. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. So I'll just be real brief for time. I chose to do it in one day and I did 6 hours straight. You know, it's one of those things when you get on the treadmill or when you don't really want to go, well, at least for me, when I really don't want to be on the treadmill and I'm like, all right, I'll just do it for 10 minutes. All right, 10 minutes goes, I can do it for another 10 minutes. And the next thing you know, I'm on it for 50 minutes. It was like one of those things. All right, I'll just do it for an hour. And then I wind up doing it for 6. But one of the things that happened was, mealtime came and I was like, oh, you know what, this is like, I'll just grab a bar. And I'm like, I wonder how many times the weight of unforgiveness or living in that false makes me take shortcuts in my life because it's too much of a bother to look at that. And then when I was in the shower, I had the word nurture on my stone. So normally I might be, quick to do the shower. It was interesting. It also made me be more mindful because you don't realize, it just makes you be aware because you have that stone everywhere. So as I was, taking my shower, I was saying words, affirmations, loving myself, which I don't do every shower. So anyway, it was a wonderful experience for me. So again, if you want that and you haven't done it, you are invited to do that this coming week. So we're going to continue our preparation for taking the fourfold path of forgiveness today. And we're going to do that by some more readiness, looking at the toll of unforgiveness, what research says, and what also research says as to the benefits of our well-being mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. We're going to try to dispel or look at some common myths that we hold about forgiveness. And then I'm going to leave you with a question. What am I willing to forgive? And you're like saying, well, where's the who? Well, if it's a who, what is it about what this person, the interactions within you. We'll talk about that later. So let's take a look. So there's so much research. Hundreds and hundreds of studies are done over the last, I don't know how many decades, on the power of forgiveness, how it impacts us, like I said, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And so I'm going to look at some of the results from Dr. Fred Luskin, who is in charge of the Forgiveness Project at Stanford University, and he collaborates across the nation with other researchers. So first, what does unforgiveness, the weight of unforgiveness, what toll does that have on us? And so I want to just share some of those symptoms of unforgiveness so we can be real clear, because it's more than, I have some resentment towards someone or something that I'm shameful of, right? It's when we're not living in accord with our wholeness as well, right? So when we are having a steady diet of anger, that's our go-to, annoyance and anger when things don't go right in our life, or bitterness, or resentment, or this feeling that life isn't fair, that it's not just, you're carrying around the same story and those heaviness of some of those wounds in your life, those are all signs and symptoms of forgiveness. And so when we are doing that, we will have experiences that affect us, like I said, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. And so the research reveals that it has an impact on our heart health. We can experience heart disease, even an increase of having a heart attack, high blood pressure, ulcers, migraines, arthritis, back pain, cancer, insomnia, chronic depression, anxiety. We can tend to be those who like to isolate because sometimes the world isn't safe or people annoy us. And then there's also the statistic of a decrease in life expectancy. So pretty significant. Sometimes we don't realize even like, well, I'm not really an angry person, but even the day-to-day annoyances that seem to be how we deal with life can take their toll. So they took these individuals who were experiencing these ailments, and it was like a couple thousand people, and inviting them into a process of forgiveness that took a year. And, it's a lifelong process, but where they received support of counselors. Some of them were in groups that were for a couple of months, and then they got to check in with them. And what they noticed was that there was an improvement in many of the health conditions that were reported, and in some cases, a complete reversal. Also, it's reported that it increases self-esteem, a sense of personal empowerment, a feeling of confidence. It inspires us with hopefulness instead of that, life is hard. And then instead of seeing people maybe as annoyances or the problem in our lives, or, we don't need anybody, began to develop more of an open heart, a sense of compassion, and also a centeredness and connection. Centeredness from within, feeling peace, being able to bring themselves into a centered place within, having a deeper connection with their own authentic self, deeper connections with people, and a deeper connection with a power greater than themselves. And all of these things also led to, because they followed these individuals, I think it was for, I don't know if it was 20 years, but there's a life increase in, or maybe more, life expectancy. So this is no small thing to see the impact of this if we say yes to it on a regular basis. And so not only does it have an impact on us mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and we know we say yes to it because we're not wanting to change anybody else. That's not our motive. But guess what? What's in the one is in the whole. What is in the whole is in the one. So when we do that work, we not only heal ourselves, but we become a power of change and of healing, and it impacts the whole. As a matter of fact, if we go to the next slide, Desmond and Mfu Tutu say this: we are bound to one another, whether by birth or our shared humanity. The quality of human life on the planet is nothing more than the sum total of our daily interactions with one another. To walk the path of forgiveness is to recognize that my dignity is bound up in your dignity, and every wrongdoing hurts us all. There have been times when each and every one of us has needed to forgive. There have also been times when each and every one of us needed to be forgiven, and there will be many times again. In our own way, if we have this human experience, we experience the broken. Out of that brokenness, we hurt others. Forgiveness is the journey we take towards healing the broken parts. It is how we become whole again. So, like I said, when we undertake forgiveness, it's not about what other people did, having expectations, that they're going to change or make amends and all that other stuff. We do it for us, to free ourselves. We return to right mind, right thinking, centering ourselves. But because of the law of oneness, right? We are vibrational beings. We are connected. We are all unique points of light, but we all come from the one power, one source, God, right? And so we impact each other every day. Sometimes we want to focus on the great big things, quote unquote, sins of others, the great big things like our leaders and how they're not showing up, and look at all the chaos. We don't realize that our little annoyances, intolerance of one another, where we get frustrated over and over with ourselves, all those things also impact on our energy that goes out into the ripple of the world. And there is something that I love that Carolyn Mace really was eye-opening to me many years ago. We talk about what's passed down from generation to generation. And a lot of times we look at our genetics, right? Well, heart disease ran in my family. Cancer runs in my family. So on and so on. And I'm not poo-pooing genetics, but she says this: that our biography, our history, becomes our biology, which opens the window that who I am being, those things that have been passed down for a generation, the false thinking, the old stories, and how I am showing up in this life can determine whether I continue in those dis-ease or choose again. Now, I don't, thereby grace that I stand in today, there are some dis-eases, which I will not name, that have been passed down from generation to generation in my family, which I can say with grace filled from within and from choosing to do some healing work myself that I am not experiencing. And then there are some that I am experiencing that other generations didn't, that I don't maybe, that I'm looking at. Now, I know things happen and we come here for a soul purpose, and sometimes that soul initiation could be through a dis-ease. I get that. But there is power in really taking a look and letting go, letting the false go and stepping into the true. And now we're going to look at some of the myths that we hold about forgiveness. And here are 5. There are some things so big, too big for forgiveness, that how could we even forgive it? Or the too small or too petty to forgive. The forgiveness is a sign of weakness. That if we forgive, then we won't hold people accountable. We will subvert justice. To forgive means, we have to forget. And that it's easy. Just have to say an affirmation or two, and it's done. Well, that may be the case sometimes. So let's take a look at too big, too small. We can say, how could the enormity, the obscene, heinous acts of things like a Holocaust, genocide, slavery in this nation, and abuse. You hear stories of parents who have locked up their kid in a basement, and then here it is, they find them when they're 30 years old. We may say, how could we ever forgive that? Well, the path may be the same, whether it's the fourfold path or another process you use. Some things may not take layers or an extended matter of time than others. But here's the thing. Desmond and Mfu Tutu said they experienced the bloodbath. I told you the story of her housekeeper, Mfu's housekeeper, being killed in her home during apartheid. And they had this choice. We can say it's too big, too grand. Or we can remain, if we do that, what will be not only for our own lives, but our country. We can just keep repeating the cycle of destruction, hatred, bitterness, and then it will keep repeating, and the cycle of disease and rewounding. So whenever you think something is too big, I invite you to reflect on that. And then when we hear stories like Mfu and Desmond's and other people who experience apartheid or other heinous acts, we could say, how could, me being annoyed with my sister not returning my call, that's too petty, right? During the pandemic, when we were going over the process of grief, and some people would share, oh my gosh, people lost their loved ones. How can I feel grief about me not being able to go out of my house? There is nothing too small or too big for forgiveness. If it creates an energy within you that weighs you down in any way or brings you out of an alignment with the truth of you, it is ripe for forgiveness. And Desmond shares this quote. There are two simple truths. There is nothing that cannot be forgiven, and there is no one undeserving of forgiveness. Take a deep breath, because sometimes that can be challenging. And so another myth is that forgiveness is a weakness. If we turn to the other cheek, and we need to look at the metaphysical meaning of that, we don't want to be a doormat. We don't want to be seen as weak, subservient. My friends, people say that too, being a marriage and family therapist for years, people would come in ashamed, their family holds the truth that to come to see a counselor means you're weak. By the way, my family had that myth as well. But it's the same here with forgiveness. It requires strength and courage to be vulnerable, to look and see, tell the truth, to make amends, to overcome your wounds, your story that seems so real, to live authentically. And it takes courage and strength to step out of your comfort zone and to be the boldest and brightest you can be. And then we look at two more, that if I forgive, then we're going to let people off the hook, right? People who do heinous things. Well, it doesn't mean that we don't say no. It doesn't mean we do the things of the world, maybe go to court. But the biggest thing is, how am I showing up? Am I doing it? What is my motive? Is it for love and protection of others that come after me? Or is it about getting even? Is it about revenge? Which cycle will it take me in? in that revenge, deconstruction, wounded cycle, or by doing this act, it's out of an act of love and compassion, just like you take your 2-year-old away from a hot stove, right? And so Desmond and Mfututu say it creates space for justice to be enacted with a purity of purpose, meaning we're centered from our wholeness in our choice that does not include revenge. And then to forgive is to forget. We are to recall our story. We are to recall what happens, but not to retell the story because we want to let everybody know what a victim we are. We recall it so we look at it, give it the light of disinfectant, notice the pattern. Is there something for me to step into more grand? What is there for me to let go of so that I can be free of this pattern? So the remembering is for that reason. And then we look at, forgiveness is easy. I don't need to go through that four steps. Forget that. Just say a couple affirmations. Okay, that may be true, but this is what Desmond and Mfu share. The path of forgiveness is not an easy one. We may say, okay, there's 4 steps only, easy peasy. But on this path, we must walk through the muddy shoals of hatred, anger, jealousy, resentment, bitterness, hurt, and make our way through grief and loss to find the acceptance that is the hallmark of forgiveness. What are you noticing right now? Anybody? Some of you may know these already, but is any of these myths ringing true for you? Okay. Yeah, it is. How about the one it's too small, too big? Anybody ever have that? You know, how could I even do that because it's insignificant? All right, so you can reflect on that. And so I am going to invite you to next readiness practice. And this readiness practice is, what am I willing to forgive? Right? And so here are some things I'm going to invite you into this week. What are those, what am I willing? A pattern of behavior you engage in that is not healthy, that is disempowering to you. A past behavior that has resulted in you carrying shame, regret, remorse. Maybe you've done some work, but maybe there are layers. Like for me, you know, my first back surgery when I was 17, and there's so many things that were attached to that. I've done a ton of work, but I know that there are still deeper places because why? I'm evolving, and as I evolve, I'm willing to see deeper. And so I invite you into that as well. The action of another that has caused you suffering. See, here we're not looking at the person. You can name the person, but what was it? What was the action? And what did you make it mean? See how it's different when we move from personality. And then resentment. What resentments? Or this world is tough, people are crazy, stupid. What resentments are you harboring and its effects, and what is your challenge in letting go? So in the back, as you leave, Pat will give you one of those if you so choose to take the mission. And Matt will put in the chat box the forgiveness exercise or challenge. Also in the back of the church and in the chat, Matt will put those definitions you shared about what forgiveness made to you. I typed them up and they're in the back for your taking as well. And so let us take this deep breath as we are continuing to prepare the way. As Desmond and Mfu shared last week, the prayer before the prayer to become willing. And so I close today with another prayer. So I invite you to close your eyes, or you can look on the screen. And the you could be a pattern, it could be yourself. I am willing to forgive you. The words are so small, but there is a universe hidden in them. When I forgive you, all of those cords of resentment, pain, and sadness that had wrapped themselves around my heart will be gone, will dissolve. And when I forgive you, you will no longer define me or disempower me. You measured me and assessed me and decided you could hurt me and that I didn't count. But I will forgive you because I do count. I do matter. I am bigger and bolder than the image you have of me. I am stronger. I am more beautiful, and I am infinitely more precious than you thought of me. I will forgive you. My forgiveness is not a gift that I am giving you. When I forgive you, my forgiveness will be a gift that gives itself to me and the world. And so it is. Amen. Have a blessed week. Namaste. And may you be courageously aware to prepare the way for the fourfold path of forgiveness.